All right, thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Jackson County Board of Commissioners. Today, September 6th, 2022. I will go ahead and just let everyone know that Commissioner Woody could not be with us this evening, but she is participating via Zoom. She is in Raleigh, and I think she may tell us a little bit more about what's happening down there. And then also, Commissioner Strickland could be with us in person, and he is also participating via Zoom. So both of them are on the camera and will be communicating with us across the video chat and the video network here. So at this time, we do have a couple of proclamations that we want to present. Um, Commissioner Woody, were you able to get a copy of the proclamation? I think. Would you like to present that proclamation, especially first? Oh, you'll have to unmute for a second.
Okay, I hit the wrong button.
You're on now.
Yes. And this proclamation, just a second. Oh dear. I had it right there. Okay. Here it is. I am so sorry. This just while we're waiting for this to come up, Phil and I are in Raleigh representing Jackson County, and I have had trouble. I even talked to Brian. I am having trouble with the internet. I'm on the iPad for this, but my laptop, which I was going to use for documents, is just not pulling things up.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to ask somebody else, but I'll just say this real fast. We're here representing Jackson County in the senior games, and we are both participating in two events on Wednesday morning and then on Thursday, and then we'll be heading back. But it's an honor to be here and to participate with seniors all across North Carolina. And it's just fun to see people on up in their years, even older than I am, who are active and doing well. The lady that did better than I did in cornhole is 98, lives in Graham County, and she is amazing. So just to inspire us all
Did she wipe
to
the floor
keep
with
active. I'm sorry, what?
Did she wipe the floor with you? Her 98?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm so glad my grandchildren didn't see it because they would have been Nana. What's wrong? She gets it in the hole 8 out of 10 times. Always in the hole. And I get 3 out of 10, Anyway, but I did qualify because she is in a higher age group than myself since she's 98. But this proclamation, that's a good segue right into this proclamation for someone who has reached an amazing milestone of 100 years.
Okay, and Commissioner Dietz is going to present this proclamation on behalf of the board.
Honoring Frances Nina Stevenson Whitmire, 100th birthday. Whereas Frances Nina Stevens Whitmire was born on September the 20th, 1922, in Jackson County, North Carolina, was baptized in Moses Creek as a child. And whereas her parents were Mara Mill Stevens and J.R. Stevens, who raised 11 children by farming, timbering, and working in the WPA 1934 program. And whereas on July 12, 1942, Frances married Tilden Erastus Whitmire. Whitmire has 3 children: Stephen, Boyce, Joyce, 9 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, and 13 great-great-grandchildren. Whereas Ms. Whitmire lived in Quebec, Silva, Poplar Branch, Innersville, Iceville, and Dillsboro. Whereas she was active in her neighborhood and always worked to help others, finding ways to lighten anyone else's load has always given Ms. Whitmire much joy, and even to this day. And whereas a celebration will be held from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, September 17th, at the Lighthouse Baptist Church, whereas the citizens of Jackson County wish to congratulate Ms. Whitmire on her 100th birthday. And now, therefore, the Jackson County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaim September the 20th Francis Nina Stevens Whitmire Day in this county. It'll be signed by Brian Thomas McMahon, Chairman.
All right, we have the proclamation presented. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of the proclamation, let it be signified by saying aye.
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 All right, that's a great honor, and we wish Mrs. Whitmire a happy birthday, and I know she'll look forward to this proclamation as well as her family. We do have a second proclamation that we want to present, and we do this customarily every year in the month of September. And I'm going to let Commissioner Jones present this one. This one is the Firefighter, Rescue Squad, and First Responder Week. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is an honor to read this proclamation. Firefighter, Rescue Squad Week, and First Responder Week, September 11th to the 17th. Whereas firefighters, rescue squad members, and first responders provide valuable services through their assistance to the citizens of their communities and Jackson County during time of need and crisis. And whereas they respond to emergencies without hesitation when the call of duty arises, and tirelessly give of their time and energy in humanitarian efforts, making themselves available every hour of the day, every day of the year. And whereas responders have physical strength, stamina, extensive training, courage, and selfless concern for the welfare of others. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize these duties and services that firefighters, rescue squad members, and first responders perform by observing September 11th through September 17th as Firefighter, Rescue Squad, and First Responder Week in Jackson County. Now, therefore, the Jackson County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim September 11th through 17th as Firefighter, Rescue Squad, and First Responder Week in Jackson County, and encourages all residents to take time to show the volunteers how much their service is valued in the county. Adopted the day 6th day of September 2022 will be signed by Brian Thomas McMahon, Chairman.
We have a proclamation that's been presented. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the proclamation, let it be signified by saying aye.
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 All right. And we also have a copy of that. Mr. Forbes, are you here to receive a copy of this on behalf of the fire service and emergency workers? Our Jackson County Fire Marshal, Mr. Michael. It doesn't matter. I'll let you display that in Charles' office. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us down to the approval of the agenda. Any changes for tonight?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Any question or discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed nay. The ayes have it. Next is the approval of the minutes from our work session on August the 9th, and the minutes from our regular meeting on August 16th. After having a chance to review those as distributed by the clerk, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move we adopt these of those, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion to adopt both of them as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Woody has seconded the motion. Any other question or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Aye.
All right, let's move on down to administrative reports. I don't have anything this evening to add. Commissioner Strickland, I'll go ahead and let you go first this evening.
I don't have anything this evening, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Woody, I'll let you go next.
Well, I guess since I'm here with the senior games, I just want to commend Eddie Wells with the Council on Aging, and then Christy, who is here with us and working with the seniors for these games. And it's also cooperation with our rec department and Dora Caldwell. So we have great people that are supporting this for seniors staying active, and we appreciate that so much.
Okay, thank you, that. Mr. Jones?
Not a lot, but I'll be attending a community college conference in Asheville Wednesday through Friday, and hopefully I'll have a chance to see our state legislators on the last day at lunch. And if I do, I will work on getting our grants for our public school projects. It's my number one priority to pass along.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Deeds?
We've been talking somewhat about this skate park, and I understand, and I didn't get to go, but at the Methodist Church Center, were you there?
I was not.
At the Methodist Church Center, they had a skater-rama or something like that. And I understand it's about 70 folks there, from about 5 years old to about 55. And
There wasn't any 98-year-olds there, was there?
no, no, but I mean, I think they thought they'd have about 20 people, whatever, and they ended up at 67 or something.
That's great.
And it kind of showed that there is a need for that, and it's something I hope we keep pushing.
We're still looking.
Thank you.
Still looking for property and getting with the town as well, trying to find property within, the downtown area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll continue working on that. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Manager? I have the county manager's report.
Yes, sir. No formal written report today, but I just do have some exciting and good news to report to the board and to the public. So the first thing I'd like to mention to the board is there has been a press release, and in this press release you can go to the ncacc.org website and then literally go down to, oh goodness, I'm going to do this right here. Well, I think I can go down to it. Press release. And then you can see that your attorney here, Ms. Heather Baker, she has won the Attorney of the Year from the Statewide Association. And so I want to say congratulations to Ms. Baker. And she has received the Attorney of the Year award. You do have the formal press release in front of you. Ms. Baker has been the county attorney here for 7 years. And through her accolades through this association and also to her great service to our county, it is really just a privilege for me to sit here and congratulate her and recognize her service. You do see in this announcement too, there is a quote from your chairman here, and I don't want to read that if you wanted to refer to your quote or to any accolades you'd like to give Ms. Baker. But again, congratulations, and we just appreciate everything you do for us.
Thank you. Yeah.
I like when they get people. Please. Well, congratulations.
Don, do you want to be in the picture?
Go horizontal.
Here we go. On three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Congratulations on that, Heather.
Thank you, Don.
Heather, we are so proud of you, and as as our manager said, we appreciate all you do. And I know that I've been at state meetings and people have commended Jackson County for being wise enough to have you as our legal counsel. But seriously, we appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
And I will say that I know we have had some great county attorneys represent Jackson County and to work on behalf of the board over the years. And sometime back, how many years ago has it been now, Heather?
7 years.
7 years ago, we made the decision to hire a full-time staff attorney that would work here on a full-time basis out of this suite of offices. And it is one of the best decisions that this board ever made. It has put us in a position to have someone who is a local expert, to be trained and to gain knowledge of how government works. This is a lot different facet of law than a traditional real estate or some of the other types of law that's practiced. And so it gave us an opportunity to have someone in-house who could go to all these trainings and seminars and educational sessions and become so versed in the law and how it applies to local government. It was a unique opportunity that I think we are a better government today because of, and we could not have ever chose a better first county attorney than Heather Baker. And she's done a remarkable job and has sort of set the standard really high. We hope you're going to be here for many, 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 many more years in that role. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
One big thing, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Baker has had experience in criminal law, district attorney, and real estate, those areas you were,
Yeah.
and then bring that together with county government. As I mentioned to you the other day, it's been such an asset, particularly in our airport authority meetings, the meetings they have, juvenile crime development prevention, and other entities that we can look to you and get advice immediately and not have to wait sometimes weeks to get to one of our hourly county attorneys from the past. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir. And continuing on with good announcements, and the board may have already read this on statewide announcements, but I am happy to let the board know and let the public know that through the good work of our recreation department, Rusty Ellis and his staff, we have been awarded the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant in the amount of $500,000 to go toward the build out of the park in the Whitney Qualla area, the property that's right next to the Smoky Mountain Elementary School. And so we will be proceeding forward with bringing that information back to the board in October and proceeding forward with that park build out with the selection of an architect coming up in October. So congratulations to Rusty and your staff, and just another set of good news for the board and for the community as a whole.
Absolutely.
And then the final announcement, just make sure everybody knows is that we have received word that through the Great Grant Award process, if you recall, your economic developer has been working with several internet providers within our community and has assisted and worked with them to submit applications to the state of North Carolina to help build out internet access to our community. If you recall, there was a PowerPoint presentation that came before this board, and what it really was doing was talking about the rules of the grant process itself. And this board chose to proceed forward and to be a matching partner with your ARPA funds to assist and to also incentivize these entities to make their application. And so we have received word that Charter, or Spectrum as they're known, that we know as Charter, who also has ARPA, they've come and presented about other areas that they're expanding their services. They have received a $3,822,863.10 Great Grant Award. That is to serve approximately 1,156 households. We're currently waiting the state to provide us additional information on the next steps the next steps will eventually it will come back to this board as far as details of the application, the details of the grant match, and things of that nature. But it is exciting news that we're able to proceed forward and that we have a internet provider that's been successful in their application. And I will say that ultimately, just a reminder to the board that your participation in this program, what it ended up doing was it reduced the potential match to their project down from 50% if they had a low scoring application down to 15%. So ultimately, when this information comes back to you and we start looking at what the county's participation would be, it's not just the amount that we participate in, it's the very idea that you agree to participate. It actually reduced the matching requirements significantly. I mean, you could argue it could be technically millions of dollars because if you think about a $3.8 million project, 50% is obviously 50% of 3.8 million. So your participation is not only beneficial just financially, it's beneficial in awarding points to this company and allowing this company to receive the to receive the grants up to about 85% of the cost of the project.
Good news.
Mr. Adams, and those 1,000 plus home families, they are not provided at all with service.
Yeah, if you recall, the state staff, the NCDIT, they had rules that there were not to be any overlap. So the areas that our providers could only apply to were areas that are not being served by high-speed internet. The details, I know everybody's got questions about where and how, and so the application information can be found online, but I'm waiting until the state comes back and provides us additional information. There will be an agreement. There will be a request to come back before this board to legally right now, we submitted a letter stating we're willing to participate. Now, the next step is for us to formally participate in these programs. That information, along with specifics of the grant application and location of the 1,000 plus people to be served, that'll all be brought back before the board when we have those details. And we had several applicants, and I believe our willingness to participate with our ARPA funds is what got as many applicants to apply. And so the state did go through a very intense process of scoring applications. All of our providers were, from our end, were applying on a level playing field in the sense that they all got the most points to them that we could have helped them with by us agreeing to match with ARPA funds. And so they all started at a level playing field in regards to that. But the state, they take into consideration things about cost per pass, location, and things of that nature. And they had a whole scoring system, and they ranked that application first.
Very good news.
Do we know where it's gonna be?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, we do. It's public. You can go online, but I'm not prepared right now to go through and pull up the maps and show you all the different locations.
Okay.
Just as good news, and I would like for us to have an inclusive conversation of not only location, but what the match dollars would be and so forth. And I'll have Ms. Henry come back and present that to the board.
Okay. Yeah, very good news.
Sir, that's all the good news I have to report to the board today, and we do have someone signed up for public comment.
Okay. Very good.
I will say, if Commissioner Dietz, if you're interested in getting a little bit more detail prior to us putting it on the agenda, just either reach out to me or reach out to Ms. Henry, and she'll be glad to sit down with you.
It's quite obvious. They know where it's gonna be if they know it's 1,000.
Yes, sir.
43 people.
Yes, sir. So if you want to get that information prior to us putting on the next it may not be the next agenda, but putting on an upcoming agenda, just get up with myself or Ms. Henry, and we'll be happy to give you the details. Yes, sir.
Okay, we do have one person sign up, Mr. Darnell. If you want to come on up and speak about what it is here that you would like to talk about.
Thank you. It's nice to hear of this staying close to the internet thing, because one, I'd like you to watch that fiber optic, whatever takes place on Pine Creek, because the dam and all their security, whatever it is running off in 1972 copper wire. The reason I'm here this time is two things, friendly things of a sense. One, in some places you find it, some places you don't. Where there's a coffee ordinance that if you have a establishment, an alcohol establishment, a bar, a restaurant, what have you, that you offer coffee. You have a coffee pot on the bar, something in view, or maybe the kitchen next to it, for those that are like designated drivers, or those that have drank too much and want to level off. It's a simple ordinance requirement. You find it in some places. It's a very simple thing to do, and you can. The advantages are evident to do that. The second thing, I ask that you entertain an ordinance structured up where all the establishments, whatever, offer coffee, paid for or not, but coffee. The second thing, I just found out that this is horrible. I'm freaked out. But the workers of the different recycle centers where you do your trash, what have you, they make $7.25 an hour. Isn't that labor law stuff now? Isn't that criminal? I think it might be. If not, I think last year, whatever it was, didn't the from the money made from recycling, whatever it was, like 46,000 or something like that. I don't know what, if that just went into general fund or whatever. But the point of being is to redress the public or look into the subject matter. They should be making $10, $12 an hour. Some think, well, they just sit on their can all day. No, they work those cans. They got to chase the yellow jackets. They get there early in the morning, year-round, weather not even permitting. It's not right. I mean, these are poor folks. They're retired, whatever they are. They're good folks. And please look into this. This is $7.25. No, that's wrong. That's got to be worked with. So if that can be played with, please do that. That's right. You know, I mean, McDonald's is doing $17 an hour for their folks. You know, and Walmart for that matter. Maybe they're 14. I'm not sure. So to look at those two things, the ordinance and the wage factor at the SRS employees. $7.25 an hour. Gee, and again, I'm glad to hear about that. I'm close to Kevin Corbin on this subject matter with the internet stuff, because you remember Charter got chased out of Wisconsin for getting into a program similar. They robbed the money, just like Frontier robbed $188 million several years ago. That just went into an investment pool to jerk people off, to where after time the dividends would pay for whatever they initially were supposed to spend the money for, and thus to keep the principal is what they did a shock on. But now we're trying to get rid of them, and we are. But to watch Charter.
Mr. Darnell, your time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, have a
I
good
think we've
evening.
done fine.
Okay, we're going to move on. First item of business is item 1, Awake building request, and we have with us tonight our new executive director for Awake. I think this is the first time you've presented to the board, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good to have Crystal Jones with us. Crystal, welcome.
Hi. Well, thank you all. I appreciate your time for letting me come and speak. This is definitely my first time, and I'm quite nervous. But Heather, I also wanted to brag on Heather too. She does a lot for us, and she also just works with our child medical collaborative as well. And so I want to brag on her. She tackles just kind of everything that we throw at her, and we beg her. We're just like, you can't ever leave. So if she ever tries to leave, don't worry, we'll tackle her from our end as well. So what I'm here to talk about though tonight is our building request fund, and we are working on our building. So if you ever have a chance to come out and see us, please do. I'd love for you guys to see the progress that we're making. So I wanted to give just a quick update about who we are, what we do, just to give an overall look at what we're doing. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been here for about 30 years. We partner with law enforcement, DSS, mental health, the district attorneys, and we serve abused children here in Jackson County. Children that have been physically abused, sexually abused, and neglected as well. We are the only child advocacy center located in Jackson County. That means our services are not being duplicative and offered by other agencies as well. So what exactly is a child advocacy center? Prior to child advocacy centers being created back in the 80s, children would have to go to all these different organizations, law enforcement, DSS, etc., and tell their stories, get the medical exams. And so it was very traumatizing for a child to have to regurgitate these stories. And so now all of these different agencies come to our center. The child tells their story in a very child-friendly setting. We do have standards that we have to meet. We are state and nationally accredited. And so it's very trauma-informed. It's also really good for our partnering agencies. We have other CACs in other counties. However, we don't want them to have to travel all the way to Asheville to receive those services. We don't want law enforcement to have to take away their time and go all the way to Asheville for watching the interviews. DSS, the same thing. And sometimes our district attorneys as well. It takes away from the other things that they need to be doing. So it's very beneficial to have a local agency that's there and available. And we also don't want our families to also have to be traveling. A lot of our families are not able to afford the travel. So another thing that we provide to them is gas cards and things like that to help provide that way. So you can see the need for our services, they continue to increase. If you look at the dates from June to July of 2019 to 20, and then from June to July of 21 to 2022, I skipped a year in there because that year was the time when COVID hit. And I wanted to make sure that it was accurately depicting accurate data. And I didn't want the data to be skewed when children were not able to safely report abuse when they were at home. So you can see in our forensic interviews, we had a 62% increase. Our child medical evaluations, we had a 350% increase in services. And just in new families coming to See Awake, we had almost an 82% increase in children that were coming. So during this time, also in COVID, we had a capital campaign that was going on, and I'm sure many of you heard about this. Our lease was coming due for our building, and we had to either figure out if we were going to pay for the building or if we were going to find another place to go, find another place for Awake. So we decided, okay, we're going to try to give this a go. We were going to make it work because our building is perfectly laid out for our services that we provide. And so we started raising the money. We needed to come up with, and I'll show you on the next slide here in just a minute, but we started raising money from organizations such as Wade Hampton Golf Club, Colony Club, State Farm Insurance, and several others, and private donations. Also, at the same time, two of our major operational funding sources, which is Victims of Crime Act and DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services, they also had some issues going on as well. Specifically, VOCA, the Victims of Crime Act, those monies were not being correctly funneled into certain organizations such as child advocacy centers and law enforcement organizations. Until the VOCA Fix Act was signed in late of 2021, we're still not seeing those monies being recuperated. Specifically, many CACs across the state took a 67% decrease in funding. Our VOCA Well Child grant that we typically receive, it's a competitive grant. Many CACs did not receive that. The reason for that is not a direct reflection upon any of us. It's because where those monies got filtered down was because those were not designated in the legislative for plea deals. And so that little tweak in the actual verbiage had to be fixed so that way those monies could be repopulated into our grant sources. DHHS tried to pick up the slack, but it still made us have to wait over 10 months for reimbursement. That put us about $184,000 waiting for those monies to come back in. So how does that affect Awake? Specifically, when we were denied a crucial medical grant because of the pandemic, that really made us focus on our reserve funds. And then that really, the 67% grant that we lost was about $50,000 in our monies that we typically see. The reimbursement timeframe that forces Awake to focus on operational expenses rather than the capital campaign. If we hadn't had these huge cuts, we probably could have found a way to make it work. But not only that, we were also seeing a huge increase in services. Thankfully, we had a really gracious donor, Phil Hare. He was our landlord. He called us up one day. He called Renee and he said, Renee, I see what you guys are doing. I see cars over there all the time. And you guys are swamped. And I really want to do something awesome. And I want to give you guys the building. Renee called me over. She said, Crystal, come listen to this. So I came over there and I thought something was wrong. And we were incredibly blessed. We were just very, very thankful for this. And he and Connie gave us the building, and we were incredibly thankful for that. So celebrate him for sure. That still left us with a lot of necessary repairs for the building. As you can see, I want to say this was probably about February when I took this picture of our thermostat. It was 54 degrees inside the building. We had kids that were coming in, and this heat was set at 71 degrees. So the repairs that we're talking about are not really cosmetic. We're talking about a new roof, because it still had the original roof that was there. The new siding, there's chips that were falling off of it. New doors, because a lot of our doors were rusted and old. The insulation for upstairs, we had Ward's Heating and Air come out and say, why is this not working right? And so one of the things that they suggested was insulation. New windows, a covered walkway, especially for clients and guests, because security is a huge priority of ours. And sometimes we make some people mad, and we want to make sure that who we're letting in is not an alleged perpetrator. And so we screen our clients who come into our building. And not only that, but COVID as well. We want everybody to be safe for sure. And you can see the other things on there as well. Here's some more pictures of some of the things that we're talking about. Rain, rain, and more rain. As you guys know, it's raining just about every day. And these are some of the rain issues that we're talking about. So some of the numbers, some of the figures that we're talking about, original price of the building was quoted at $125,000. Luckily, this is not included because the building was donated to us. And so the amount needed for essential repairs by Western Builders was $156,000. We were able to raise $91,288.43. And so we're very excited about that, even the 43 cents. The amount still needed to finish the repairs is the $64,711.57. And Mr. Adams, I'm so sorry, but I miscalculated on the letter. It's actually less on my slideshow than what it is in the letter, and I can redo that. I'm sorry. Absolutely, I agree. So that is the total amount that we are requesting. But I want you to also know that you're not pouring money into something that is, money pit, or the building was appraised for $300,000 in July of 2021. So our building is got good bones. We just had some things that we needed to fix to make sure it's sustainable. So just a really quick timeline into some of the construction. We met with an architect. We met with Western Builders just to make sure everything was going to be completed by people that were reputable. And then we finalized plans. The construction started to begin. So we took it upon ourselves to really just go after this and do what we needed to do. The concrete is poured, and then to date, there's actually been a few more things that's not listed up there that's been completed. So we're well on our way. Sustainability for sure is our end goal. We want something to be there for the long haul because, children are going to come. It's like a bird bath. You build it, they come. It's a child-friendly setting because we feel like that's important. Kids often ask us, where do you sleep? And sometimes we're there till 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's very important that they don't feel like they're just going to another corporate building. They need to feel somewhat secure when they come to talk to us. And so that's very, very important. The trauma-informed approach is crucial. We have a local place that's very accessible. It's right across from Harold's. I know all of you know where it's at. But having that local place that's easy to get to for our partners, for DSS, for law enforcement, for our district attorneys, for mental health, we're very centralized for all those different agencies. That's very important. Like I said, we're state and nationally accredited. We are an essential part of the Child Medical Collaborative Incorporated initiative, and so we're very excited about that too. And we also serve our most vulnerable population, which is children. So in summary, we collaborate with other foundations and private donors. We have great working relationships with them. we are an essential service. We have been around for about 30 years. We're going to be around for at least 30 more, and hopefully a lot longer than that. We're only getting busier. So we've seen, like I said, at least an 82% increase, and that was a couple of months ago when I pulled these figures. I know that since then, we've only gotten busier since then. So we're collaborative partners with several different county agencies, different nonprofits in the area. So we're happy to be in collaborative partnerships with multiple different groups and organizations, and we strive for excellence. We like being a pilot program with the CNC. We like being part of that. We like having a place that others can be comfortable in, and I'm excited to be here to talk to you about it. And we'd love to have anybody over for a tour and to show our services. So.
Very good. Well, thank you, Crystal, on your presentation. And I know this is an item that we talked about recently at our work session, and I polled the board then, and as no surprise, it was a unanimous consent of the board to put this on the agenda to move forward with trying to help y'all with this request, because we know the great work that you do in our community and what a great service this is for our children. And unfortunately, we hate that we wish that no child would have to come.
Absolutely.
But we know what reality is, and making sure that we have those facilities and that service is very, very important. So the request has come to us today that we assist them with this capital project, and they are short $64,711.57, and this would be a request for us to fund this amount, and we could take this out of our American Recovery funds that we've got set aside that we've talked about using for one-time expenses. So what's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion for the children of Jackson County that we approve this.
Okay,
request.
thank you, Commissioner Strickland. Commissioner Strickland has moved that we appropriate this amount. Is there a second? We've got a second. Any other question or discussion?
Now, this $64,711.57, this is to finish this project,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
That is great.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none then. Mr. Woody, did you have anything you wanted to add? I want to make sure I got everybody.
Yes, thank you. One of the things that I appreciate about Awake is that they have an educational component, and I think that's very important. I know with some of these social issues, we can look at it and say, the numbers are increasing, and they certainly are. But do we have to stay there? And I believe that we don't. I think we can be proactive. And with education, years ago, Jackson County had a very high teen pregnancy rate. And several different nonprofits and agencies got together, and we worked in primary prevention, and we've made some great strides in that as well. So I applaud Awake that they also are doing some things in primary prevention.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Okay, hearing no other comments or questions, I'll ask our clerk if she would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Deeds?
Yes.
Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Stribley?
Yes.
Chairman Knightley?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Well,
Good job.
okay, next is item 2, the opioid settlement funds planning discussions. And as Don making his way up to the podium to go over these slides, I've got a couple of comments I want to offer. First, just state that there will be no decisions made today concerning this agenda item. This is purely for information only. This is just sort of to help continue to set the stage for all the discussions that will take place in the weeks and months to come, because this is a long, drawn-out process. And as Don will overview here in just a few moments, this is a very defined process as well. When this lawsuit was settled, and all these parameters and conditions, and it's a very defined, and we have to adhere to what guidelines have been established for the expenditure of these funds. And there's still some things that we don't know yet from a record keeping standpoint and from a finance standpoint. So we're still waiting for some final instructions to come down on how some of this will go forth. But we as a board will be faced with what is the best use of these funds in Jackson County to help our citizens and to help combat the opioid crisis. Not only will we go through this process of learning more about what these funds can be used for and what kind of potential impacts they will have, but it also will give us an opportunity as we discover what we think might be best for our county, for us as leaders to be having these same conversations with our neighbors in neighboring counties here in the West, to see how can we partner together, because some of the solutions might mean that we partner together to provide a greater service that benefits a whole lot more individuals than just few in a certain area. So this will be a long, broad process. And Don is going to go through, there's a series of slides here that also will say the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, and I know Gail has been very involved with the association, and they have done a great job trying to summarize and to put this in a concise presentation. And so with all that being said, I'm going to let Don talk a little bit about the track we're on and sort of the process and the steps that we want to move forward with.
Okay. Thanks, sir. And this really is a follow-up conversation from our August 9th meeting when, if you recall, and I would also still encourage you all as board members and the public to go back and look at the agenda item on the August 9th meeting in regards to information related to the settlement funds. That really is detailed information. If you remember, Ms. Winchester put a table of contents of the information, and really it was giving you the detailed information of how these monies can be expended and also the planning process necessary. But it really was plain and just somewhat cumbersome and just really did not explain the process well. Commissioner Woody attended a meeting that was held by our Southwestern Council on Government, and it was also sponsored by MAHAC and a couple other entities, and it really was providing information for the opioid settlement dollars. We went and attended. It was a regional meeting, and we attended it over at our Department of Aging boardroom. And this is where I saw this presentation given by the Association of County Commissioners, and I thought to myself, wow, this really took that information that I provided to you on August 9th and really reformatted it in a way that may be more consumable by the board and by the public itself. So I did have a conversation with them, and with them meaning the Association of County Commissioners, and they basically gave me permission to utilize their slides here, and bear with me. I'm trying to get my pointer going here, and it's not working. And so, as you can see, I did try to give them credit. Information prepared by Jason King and Nidhi Sachdeva. And Ms. Sachdeva here, before I jump to her information, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners has also created an initiative to provide resources to counties to help them go through a long-term planning process and a process of just providing us resources when we're trying to figure out how to expend these funds. And so what they have is they've gone through and they've created a new position, and her name is Nidhi Sachdeva, and I provided her contact information. She's relatively new. She's been there probably a couple months at this point, and she's very experienced in this area, and she will provide the counties with a lot of resources to proceed forward with it. And so as we proceed forward through this, the goals of the Association of County Commissioners basically is to assist and support North Carolina counties in planning and for and utilizing the National Opioid Settlement Funds. And what I did, just so the board knows, is I took a larger presentation that was presented by Ms. Sachtiva, and I've narrowed it down to just some information for us today, because today is really about just trying to talk about next steps of how to proceed forward in this process. So as I stated here, that the association is trying to provide resources to counties to help us in these processes. So if you look at their supportive services, what they're looking to do is to have strategic action planning services for us, collaboration and connection services for us, and program implementation support. And as of right now, the association is still putting together these services. So it's going to take months, for them to put together and for us to understand what services really would be available from the association. Now, the association is not the only entity we get services from, but ultimately we do rely on them for assistance in a lot of different areas. So for today, what I want to do is just go over some key elements that we've talked about before. And what I really liked about their presentation, it just consolidated this information in a very consumable format. Just a reminder, this is something your county attorney worked on quite a bit. The Jackson County has gone through and signed a MOA, a Memorandum of Agreement. With that Memorandum of Agreement, that allows for 80% of the settlement funds to go to local governments, and 15% will go to the state of North Carolina, and 5% will be used for county incentive fund. Just a reminder, everybody's seen this before, we will receive $3.2 million. I know you can't see it on the screen here, but we've had this in other presentations, $3.2 million over an 18-year period for the payment schedule. One of the key things, again, that I really liked about this presentation is it does concisely talk about the Memorandum of Agreement guiding principles. And again, I'm going to keep coming back to this agreement because this is an agreement that all counties signed off on in regard to how we expend these funds. And the guiding principles of the MOA agreement is to spend the money to save lives, use evidence and data to guide your spending, to invest in prevention of root causes, to focus on equity in populations disproportionately impacted, and specifically to include people with lived experience in this process. So that would be whether it be people recovering from addiction or people who have family members who are dealing with these issues. And then finally, transparency and accountability. Because at the end of the day, yes, we're going to receive these funds over an 18-year period, but we also have to report them correctly, and we have to show that we've expended these funds appropriately under the MOA agreement itself. Again, jumping down, I had provided more detailed information at that August 9th meeting. So, like I say, I keep referring back to that agenda. If you want to go down and get more details, whether it be the public or you as board members, please go back and look at that agenda packet and specifically that agenda item. But just a reminder, the MOA offers local governments two options when we expend those funds. They're calling it option A and option B. And what this presentation really focuses more on option A than it does B. Option B will require a more stringent and significant planning process in order for the county to expend those funds on that. For today, we're going to talk more about option A. And so if you go down, this is one of my favorite slides that was put together because, again, referring back to the information that's online and I provided to the board previously, that was pages and pages of information, whereas this slide will break down under option A that basically the 12 options that are available to this board without going through an extensive planning process available to this board for you to decide whether to expend these funds. And as you can see, what I'm going to do, what I've done beyond this, and what I'd like to do is not necessarily spend time for each of these items. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each of them, but I just want to show you how to read this. I've put a number 1 in front of collaborative strategic planning process. So if you go to the next slide, you see a number 1, you see the title there, and it just gives you some ideas. The idea of this PowerPoint presentation, as the chairman said, you're not deciding this today. I'm trying to get ideas and concepts in front of you so that as you start discussing how you want to proceed forward, at least that gives you a base understanding of what we're talking about. So again, as you go to the next slides, they will refer back to this 2, 3, 4, 5, things of that nature. So ultimately, as you can see, these are the 12 items that we can expend funds under option A without going through a planning process. One being a collaborative strategic planning process. So if you look at number 1, it does state that you can spend these opioid dollars to help with if you wanted to go through a full-blown strategic planning process. One of the things I would mention to this board too, if you choose to move forward with that type of process, and I have some additional information for you in regarding that process. There are other funding sources out there available, and just like resources from NCACC that can help us with this process. So if the board eventually chooses to go with some type of more stringent planning process, I would recommend that we allow staff to go and try to find other resources before we start trying to expend these funds, because I believe they're out there. So if you go and look at number 2, and I would always tell folks to just refer back to this right here, because this really is a snapshot of what we can expend these funds on. So if you look at evidence-based opioid use disorder treatments, so and Heather, that some of the stuff I know you looked at is MAT, the Medical Assisted Treatment Program. So they're utilizing different acronyms, but you will see this OUD quite a bit. And ultimately, when you see all these acronyms, what they're really talking about is basically medications for opioid use and treatment behind them. So ultimately, when you look at evidence-based OUD treatment, what they're talking about is utilizing different treatment methods to provide assistance to addicted people. I'll jump to the next one. So if you sit here and look under the evidence-based OUD treatments, you can see some of the goals are improve patient survival, decrease overdose withdrawal symptoms, decrease illicit opiate use, increase patients' quality of life, improve birth outcomes among pregnant people who have substance abuse. And what I've done is in this slide, or what the association's done, they've listed the 3 main treatment methods when you're talking about medical, or when you're talking about medications for treatment. Now, I want to stop here just for a second and look at this and go back to this slide here. So, for example, I'm going to jump down a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about 10, 11, and 12. That's areas that you may want to expend these funds that work in the criminal justice system. But one of the points I want to make here, or you can look at post-overdose response or recovery support. I would ask everybody to focus and spend a little time understanding this evidence-based addiction treatment. And really, we're talking about medications, because a lot of these other bubbles, for lack of better terms, or available options to expend these funds, they're going to have some type of treatment with medication involved with it. Okay, so as we're going through and trying to educate ourselves about if we wish to spend funds, again, in recovery support or in the judicial system and or in our incarcerated people, a lot of this is going to go back to evidence-based addiction treatment. So I just want to let everybody know that as we proceed forward and the board wishes to continue to educate itself, one of the first things I would recommend is you educate yourself a little bit further on the treatment methods, because those methods will be associated with a lot of these other programs. And so just jumping on down, you see number 2 is the evidence-based OUD treatment. 3 is just recovery support. That is such a broad term, so I put a slide in there that the association put together. That can be housing, education, access to care, transportation. It really is once somebody has received their treatment and their recovery, as I think we're all aware, there are a lot of factors that apply that when people become addicted to opioids and any other substance abuse issues, they have a whole generally myriad of other social issues that they're dealing with. And when you're trying to provide recovery support, it includes a lot of these areas here. So if you look at recovery housing, again, that's just a little bit, given a little bit more detail in regards to recovery support. And there are concepts and ideas on when you're trying to work with somebody that's recovering from, substance abuse and their families, then housing generally is a key component that you're looking at. Employment support services and training, again, just trying to give the board some ideas and concepts. There were multiple other slides that were associated with all of these bubbles, if you like a better term. What I'm trying to do is just get the board to start thinking in terms of what does each of these elements mean. Early intervention, we had a little bit of conversation today, obviously, with the weight, unfortunately, what they have their services they provide. A lot of their issues evolve around substance abuse within the child abuse arena. And so when you start talking about early intervention, I thought this is a really good slide because early intervention can mean a wide variety of things. And so I thought I would just throw this in there just to show you some of the examples of what early intervention can mean. Post-overdose response, again, just giving you some concepts about quick response teams. People understand things like Narcan. We've been doing certain things that allow for us to respond to overdoses. Again, number 9, this is just specific out of the MOA agreement. This isn't something that I've put together or anybody else. This is specific in MOA agreement that syringe service programs would be a fundable program. And then if you look at the 10, 11, and 12, you start getting into legal system and you start getting into incarcerated persons and reentry programs. And so that's diversion programs, meaning how do you divert people who provide an alternative to incarceration who have substance abuse issues. Criminal legal system diversion programs, again, pre-arrest diversion programs, things of that nature. 11. Remember the concept of the opioid use disorder treatment for medication. You can do medications in jail settings. So, you can do diversion programs that provide services to individuals in lieu of incarceration. And like I stated before, all of this involves treatment with medication or some type of services. There's also services that can be provided in the jail setting itself that's specifically allowable with these funds. And then finally, under the legal system or jail system, you have reentry programs. And this is just providing services for those who come out of the jail setting in order for them to hopefully be successful. I will tell you one of the stats that really stuck out to me in this presentation is this right here. Opioid overdose death rates 40 times higher than the general population during the first 2 weeks after release. 11 times more likely to die 1 year after release. These are specific stats that I'm not just focusing on this, but when you go back and look at one of the main purposes of the MOA agreement is to save lives, right? And so I just thought that stat really stuck out to me in regards to that area. So ultimately, I did provide some, if you recall, in our previous presentation, that ncopioidsettlement.org is still the primary source to go try to find additional information. And so I'm going to scroll back to for like I say, lack of better terms, back to what I call the 12 bubbles or 12 primary under option A. Ultimately, the board's future conversation really, I see is twofold. One is what type of planning process are you looking to engage in, if you wish to engage in it? And so I did provide you some information that's sitting in front of you. I also have it in the line. I'm not going to go over all the details. I think that's it. So if the board chose to move forward with some type of extensive planning process,
And just to clarify, this is under option B.
yes,
What
option,
we just looked at those bubbles is option A, which are really predefined
Yeah.
expenditure areas.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden we said we don't want to do any of that, we want to do something totally different, that's option B, which requires a very extensive process.
which is the number one bubble
Correct.
under the 12 bubbles, is the collaborative strategic planning process. I'm not going to go over this. I just wanted to give you the 2 pages. Last time I provided this information, it was 20 pages. What this does is it really describes the planning process that has to take place. And on the next page, it tells you all the individuals that have to be involved in this planning process. And that is the main thing I wanted to get in front of the board in regards to if you chose to go through the official strategic planning process. I've given you the roadmap here. I would say if you choose to go through any type of planning process, whether it's the full-blown planning process or a smaller process, I would recommend go back and read this, because if you look at the stakeholders they're recommending to be involved, these are the stakeholders that eventually, whether you choose to educate yourself, like if we bring people here to present to the board, you will find that most of these people are listed in this stakeholder group. So I will go back to the I'm sorry. Hey, can you get me back over there, Brian? I can't see there you go. All right. So I'll go back to the strategies A, and as you can see, number 1 is the collaborative strategic planning process. I wanted to just give you that little bit of detail on that process. And so the other items as we proceed forward is that, where does the board wish to go from here? And do you wish to be educated further on some of these elements? Those are the types of things that I believe this board needs to have further conversations about.
Okay.
And I'll just throw this out for discussion.
Any comments or questions about what's been presented thus far? I think Commissioner Woody is unmuting herself. So, Commissioner Woody?
Well, I just want to express appreciation to our manager, Don Adams, for really delving into this and looking. It's a lot of information, and I know several of us have been to some presentations and workshops, and it would be real easy to just be like, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming, it's just too much. But we have to do something, we want to do something, and we've got to be strategic about it. So this planning and these 12 bubbles, I think, are wonderful. One thing that Chairman Matt Mahan has mentioned, and I'll just briefly mention it, he may want to delve into it, but he's had some conversations about regional effort for inpatient treatment. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yes, where you go somewhere, and we don't have that locally, and we could collaborate with some other counties. And then just the other thing I would like to say is that we and Manager Adams and I've had a couple conversations about this, inviting some strategic stakeholders, and those are identified as people who use drugs, people in medication or other treatment, people in recovery, people with criminal justice involvement, and family members or loved ones of the individuals just listed. I think it's be really wise for us to get a snapshot of local people, our people, us. It's not them, it's us, and how it's impacting and where the gaps are, so that we can look at then some of these steps by saying, well, maybe this is taken care of in Jackson County, but this is a huge gap right here.
Yeah, that is very correct, Mr. Woody, and I think that's also what I was alluding to when we sort of opened this topic up for discussion. And this is going to be a process that we have to go through because I will admit I don't know everything I need to know about what's available as far as options and what some of these options mean. And that might mean that we need to bring in some professionals to help educate us, to make sure we fully understand what these options are. And as you've indicated, we need to reach out to our community and hear from families who are in the midst of this or have been battling this and hear from them their experience. So I think we can find a way to weave all that together into a process that will span the next several months to help educate us and put us as a board in a position to figure out what is the best way to expend these funds locally. And then hopefully our counterparts in other counties are doing this, and then we can work together through a regional concept and say, hey, this is what we works for Jackson, what's going to work for your county, and maybe it means that we find ways to partner with them to provide this regionally. So it is. I think we're all on the same page with that. Mr. Reese, do you look like you have a comment or question?
This is complicated.
It's very complicated.
This is going to go on for at least 18 years, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me that the people that know the most about this in our county right now is the fellow standing right there and our attorney. She's been involved in this for quite a bit. And they got a job themselves. It seems like to me we'll have to find somebody to kind of take us under the wing and say, and keep us informed and whatever. Maybe that's not the case. I don't see where he can continue to do this for the weeks and months if this is going to take place to implement. What's your thoughts on that, either one of them, or all of them?
I've always been hesitant. I agree with you. It is an undertaking, and I'm just now processing one component that has so many moving parts that it's going to take some reading up, staying up at night. I've always been resistant to giving a pot of money to a new administrative position and not knowing what binders or guidelines to tell that individual. So as we move, whatever direction we move, it's almost like finding somebody who's already educated. A name comes out, the former director, Bob. Bob Cochran. So Bob might have expertise in some of these areas and might be a go-to, but I want us to use that money on the people that need it the most for recovery, addiction recovery, and help as to create another layer of management.
Mr. Adams, any thoughts?
Yeah, so that's for future conversations for the board. That goes back to, I know when you use these words, collaborative strategic planning process, it sounds as though we're trying to hand this off to a group and then just ask them to figure it out and come back. That's not what I'm describing to you, but this would require some amount of manpower, so to speak, or person power to organize an ongoing. That's what I believe you're referring to, Commissioner B.
Put a lot of work in this. Maybe somebody's already got a job, but
So I think long term, that is a strategy that some communities have taken to go through and eventually have a lead agency or have a lead department to go through and try to help take us through this process. Okay. So now that's kind of where I went back to. If that's where we're leaning towards, whatever version of what we've said here, then that would be, I would look to go and try to find other resources besides these dollars. That's what I was mentioning to you earlier. There are dogwood, the money's out there, I believe, for dogwood. There's resources from the association and things of that nature. If we're interested in going down that road, then the board just needs to let me know, and then I would go and research the resources to allow for us to figure out how to bring together that. The second track of this is whether or not you wish to continue to be educated in this conversation. And so, for example, I would throw this out based upon previous information, concepts that Commissioner Woody has brought out, and what we talked about. So let's just take these bubbles. We've used the name Dr. Kopak publicly before about is this somebody that we wish to paint and heal. So that's, if you recall, we talked about Dr. Kopak. He works for Mayhew now. He used to be a Western Carolina University professor. He actually got some grants that flowed through Jackson County that helped him study inmate incarcerated people about substance abuse. I went ahead and had a meeting with Dr. Kopak, and I know Commissioner Woody was in conversations with him. His expertise would be around 10, 11, and 12. That's what he basically directly told me, that if that was going to be the expert that you wanted to hear, then he would come before you and provide you some information between 10, 11, and 12. But if you wanted to hear more information about the disorder itself, like what is what is opioid addiction and what are treatments and so forth, we would need to bring in another expert. And so that is another route as we're moving forward, that we could bring in experts that are more than likely going to be part of this, some type of stakeholder group, planning group, if you choose to move that fashion. We can bring in those people to over months, just educate you, to try to get you to, educated as far as what these 12 bubbles may or may not be.
And I think not only will that be good for us as board members to educate us on what these bubbles represent, but it'll be a good education for the public at large, because these will be at our meetings to understand more about this opioid crisis and what it entails. And so having those speakers to come and present to us will be a good thing all the way around. I think we'll get a lot of positive benefit from that. Commissioner Striblin, I know you've been very passionate about this topic and have advocated on behalf of trying to help with this opioid crisis. Any thoughts? Make sure to give you a chance to offer some comments here.
It's just something we need to get a grip on. It's way out of hand. And it just something desperately needs to be done. That's for sure.
Go ahead, Commissioner Woody.
Right. Yeah, I would like to just make one more comment, just as a thought. And I am not I'm not bringing this up because I think we should do it. I'm just thinking about it. And when Commissioner Jones said that about, adding another layer of administration, as a teacher, I can remember I just groaned inside when they announced they were getting another associate at the central office to oversee this and that. And I'm thinking, wait, we need more teachers, Anyway, so I understand that whole idea, but my eyes were open to something when I went to this presentation by Surrey County, which is also relatively rural like we are. And they had the second highest overdose rate in the state. And their board of commissioners said, we got to do something about this. And this was before this opioid money and everything. So what they did was hire a departmental head, and his title was overdose prevention. Oh, I can't find in my notes what I wrote down. But anyway, he had this chart on a whiteboard and he showed us a picture of it. And they had prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery. And it was a continuum of care. And if it was green, Surrey County was doing it. If it was blue, they were just getting started. And if it was red, not yet. And when they'd have their meetings, he coordinated all the different departments because, like Mr. Adams said, you know, the sheriff's department deals with these people in the jail all the time and with arrests. And Sheriff Hall has told us 80% of crime in Jackson County goes back to substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, something. We know with Awake, a lot of that deals with substance abuse, abusing these children when people have been altered through use of drugs and alcohol. DSS, our problems and concerns that we have with foster care. Many of these children are removed from homes because of substance misuse. So all these things interact, and what this one person did was work on connecting the dots so that there weren't big gaps in service. And that started me thinking, if you had the right person and the right situation and cooperation, this whiteboard, he said, we constantly, every week, we work on it. We change the colors. Sometimes we have to go back because something was green and then something happens and it's not green anymore, and we have to work on that. But what it was to me was this continuum of care, and it was very strategic. They weren't going to let this crisis get the best of them. They were chipping away at it step by step, and that did impress me. But it took a person whose focus of their job was coordinating. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah, that's a very, very impressive story about what Surrey County's done, and that's something for us to consider. I personally would like, let me ask this first. Does everybody feel comfortable with what we're talking about, the concept of starting in our work sessions and start having these discussions every work session going forward? We could have this as a topic and learn something each time. We may need to even set aside a special call work session at a point in time where we'll hear from various individuals, people, experts in the field, but also we'll weave into that local families to provide some information and viewpoints as we try to build this picture of what we think we need to do. Does that feel like an appropriate approach?
Yes.
Anybody
Yes.
disagree with that?
I don't disagree with you. This is so in depth, and what Woody's talking about, we bring a person in here and he shares them last 3 with us.
Mhm.
Well, that's 25% of it. He probably can't share a whole lot. The time you go through those 3 and then 3 more and 3 more, if you ain't got somebody truly focused on it, really focused on it, you'll back to forget what happened to the 3 that you seen back there a month ago. So I think it's something we're just going to have to, we're just going to think about it, look at it, try it.
And my thoughts on that new layer of government, or administrative layer, was the fact that we're getting around 150,000 a year for the next 18 years. Seems like that number fluctuates a little bit, 2020. And if you hired some competent person to administrate this and help us, you're talking 60 to 80,000 a year, I'm guessing, which is almost half the money.
Yeah, that's not good.
And I just, as I was listening to Commissioner Woody, the thought that if multiple counties that are going back can each do the little chip, we go with 3 counties that have the same desires and goals as Jackson County, it sure makes it a lot easier to swallow that pill.
And it could be a regional organization already in place that could provide the services.
That's good. Yeah.
Would it be agreeable? I think probably, as Don has sort of mentioned, maybe one of the first steps, one of the first presentations we hear is to hear a very basic understanding of what opioid abuse is and just understanding what it is. Would that be okay to have him go ahead and schedule that first presentation? We'll reach out and get one of our local clinicians, doctors to come and to talk. Works through VIA to provide us with an overview. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts or comments about this? Like I said, tonight was just sort of to revisit this and define and help guide us into our planning sessions as we go through our work sessions. Anything else?
No, sir.
On is that?
Yes, sir. I'll go through in our upcoming work sessions. I'll start with number 2 here. That could be a combination of VIA or our health department or whatnot that can give us that basic information. And then I've already had conversations with someone such as Dr. Kopak that ultimately, again, having that base information will allow for this to mean more. And even having this first conversation about what opioid addiction is, if you wish to listen to somebody with lived experience, then that will at least maybe give you a base understanding of when they're here talking to you about either their loved one or themselves, that it will give you a basic understanding of what they're telling you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next item. Item 3, Unified Development Ordinance Amendments. I'll give Mr. Post a chance to get up to the podium.
Good evening. Today I just wanted to take a moment. This is really just more for background and information to let you know some of the work that the Planning Board and the 441 Planning Council have been doing, and some amendments that we would hopefully bring forward here in the not too distant future to call for public hearing. Normally we do this at a work session, but the manager was kind enough to allow me to come here this evening. I'll be out of town at the work session to introduce a couple of concepts that changes we're looking to make. Predominantly, these changes are to our industrial development standards, which are found in Article 6 of our ordinance. And it's to cover some, or to address some uses that, a couple of newer uses, and one that is a newer version of a use. I want to start with animal processing facilities, small-scale animal processing facilities. This issue came to our attention pre-pandemic as we had some folks talking about, basically what we term right now as a heavy industry as a slaughterhouse, which we treat, those can be rather large enterprises, and we treat those as heavy industry. But if the pandemic taught us anything and highlighted anything, it's that supply chain issues come, and most of our local meat production processing actually comes from smaller entities and providers. We worked with our local farm-to-table folks, the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, our Cooperative Extension Office, the state's Cooperative Extension Office, and talking about how do we look at allowing a smaller scale use in our jurisdiction without losing, the concepts that we protect our properties from larger industrial types of uses, which is why we have a heavy industry ordinance in the first place. And so out of that came some discussions about allowing smaller facilities. So this set of standards, and the Planning Board has already held a public hearing, and they unanimously are recommending that the board consider these standards, would be to allow small-scale facilities not exceeding 10,000 square feet in size. There is some precedence around the state as to smaller facilities. There's another county just north of Durham called Granville that has a 10,000 square foot max. And as we talked to the state folks at the Cooperative Extension Office, they gave us a couple organizations or entities that are doing this type of work in rural areas, and they tend to be between 5,000 and 10,000 square foot worth of buildings and facilities. The one change that you see that's highlighted, we also work with the Ag Advisory Board as in the county. Those are our producers of agricultural products and folks that actually make use of these smaller facilities around the region. And they just asked that we consider, and we did add in, that we exempted retail space from that 10,000 square foot configuration. Basically, some of those places will have small retail spaces up front to sell some of the goods that come through the processing center. So that was one of the recommendations that we incorporated in there later on. But basically what it states is that all processing facilities need to conduct their business inside the facility. So none of the animal processing activities will happen otherwise, but inside the facility. That they create a waste management plan that will highlight how they're going to maintain the waste that comes to the animal processing facilities. Many folks I've learned in this process use renderers and other businesses that will take the byproduct and for use in other industrial processes. So we're going to actually require that they have a plan how they're going to manage the odors that come out and the noise. So we have some standards in there about basically complying with the noise ordinance and configuring the operation so that they contain some of the waste and byproduct, which would reduce the ability for odor to move through the community that it's in. We require vegetated buffers around the property if they don't already exist, setback from water streams and bodies, and a general setback of 100 feet from all property lines. So it won't be on every property, but you need to have a size enough property that you can be properly buffered from your neighbors, which will help reduce any of the negative impacts of the community. Require a connection permit from NCDOT if you're on a state-maintained road. As you know, you will have an increase in agricultural type of vehicles and trailers and whatnot, making sure that those are all there. And then that the industry stay compliant with all state and federal guidelines. And in case that they are not, or we are informed that they are not, we can also issue a stop work order to help gain that compliance back. So that's animal processing facilities. Any questions about that, those set of standards? I know I went through those pretty quick, but okay.
We're talking about processed any.
Yes, correct. And yeah, any animal. And what I also mentioned, I failed to mention, this won't apply to those that process animals for their personal use. So if you're a hunter and you are processing your deer these rules do not apply to that. This is for commercial operations that are being done, not for personal use. So this would only apply to that situation.
We don't have any of these facilities currently, do
We do not. We do not. I think last one closed down several years ago out there off of 116, I think, at the time.
I want to make sure that we're clear. What you're talking about makes these uses more allowable, correct? I mean,
correct.
Right now, currently, if you try to come in, I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Yeah.
I know the board does, but this is making it easier for somebody with these size facilities to create these facilities, because now they have to fall under what ordinance?
They have to fall under heavy industry standards, which require you to be 1,320 feet from any church, commercial business, house, anything that's basically not vacant property.
Usually we're making things more restrictive, but in this
Correct.
case we're not.
That's correct. And we think that with these standards, we'll allow the use and allow it in such a way that it would more naturally blend within the communities that these might be in. So it's trying to allow these uses and allow more, opportunities for folks to come in. And I'll tell you that during the research, there's a lot that goes into folks that want to start this business. I mean, it's quite an impressive process that they have to go through and commit funding and effort into doing it. Yeah, correct. And I think we didn't get into what type of animals you process. We didn't get into the number of animals you process, because that's a hard thing for us to do with land use. Size of structure we can certainly do, and then however many animals they're able to process with following all the guidelines that they have to do, then that would be considered a small scale operation as opposed to larger ones that you find in our region.
Mr. Postman?
Yes, sir.
Are we wanting to do this just so we're ahead of the 8 ball, or are we having some larger companies that do processing of animals? Will we be approached by some of these companies, or we're just, like I say, we're just doing this to be ahead of the 8 ball?
Yeah, I think where we've been we've not been approached by any company that has said we would like to do business in Jackson County. I think what we're trying to do is be semi-proactive. I say semi because we have been approached by some of our state agencies, like the State Department of Agriculture, that has said we've got some programs that help folks get some of these processes started. And once we informed them a couple of years ago that I didn't really have a way to get them a permit, that's when we started discussing how we might go about in doing something that will allow for these things. But currently we don't have anybody with an application waiting or waiting on a process to be established.
All right, thanks, sir.
Correct, over time, yep.
I think that fellow moved to Macon County, maybe he's doing that up there.
I think he's just working with somebody over in Macon County. I think he's still raising the animals here. Last
The
time.
problem we have, expecting it come about because of the epidemic we have. We got people that started raising their own beef and went back to raising a hog and things of that nature. And then once they got them up ready to slaughter, they really didn't know how to do that. Slow timers here did, but they didn't. So they reached out to the processing plant, and we couldn't get them anywhere. I mean, I've had a fellow call me, it's over a year before he can get a steer in there, get him slaughtered and processed. And it didn't, I mean, he called into Georgia and everywhere else. All of them are inundated with people wanting to get these things done. So if we open this up, it may happen because there's a great need for it.
So the second use area that is actually very proactive. We've not had much in the county that's talked about this, and it's a newer type of use that we've seen come on the horizon. It's called cryptocurrency mining. It's what they call blockchain. It's basically data mining using large processors and computer systems to process crypto data for the cryptocurrency data, and it's quite I'd say quite new. It's a newer type of use, and while we've not seen any in Jackson County, we have seen some come into the region, and some concerns regionally shared about some of these processing facilities due to noise and how they blend into the community. And so we talked with the planning board about being a little bit more proactive on how do we allow these uses to happen in Jackson County if someone's interested, and under what context. Some of the concerns that come around, they're usually high energy users. They can, without any other structure, dictating how they muffle the noise, because they need large cooling systems because they're basically running 24 hours a day, these computer systems. And also notice that if you have no other standards, they end up in kind of travel containers or cargo containers and things like that. So there's not a lot of, if you don't have any standards in place, you could just get a very minimal type of development that may not be compatible with the area that it would sit in. So these rules that we've talked to the planning board about would allow for these uses to happen, but would create some standards. You have to meet the noise ordinance. Any electronics, because these computers, these servers are turned over because they're constantly used. So making sure they're disposed of in an appropriate manner. Requiring, like we do for a lot of these industrial uses, requiring evergreen vegetative buffers to buffer the neighbors and the neighboring property. We're going to require a noise mitigation plan for them to tell us how they're going to mitigate their noise, and they can do that through technology that would better be compatible with the communities that they might come into. That these places be fenced, that they be in structures that meet building code, so you wouldn't be able to use a container type of system. Because there's not generally anybody that actually works out of these units, we want them to put a sign in operational information in case of emergency. Who do we contact? That's a local contact in case there's a public emergency or fire or something, who do we contact? Because generally those entities don't have an office locally. We'd also take a look at setbacks 50 feet from property lines. And then something that we've seen in a lot of the ordinances that are being passed around the country is requiring that they do renewable energy offset, because they're such high energy users that we put a provision in that stated that if they were going to locate in Jackson County, they would need to produce renewable energy and add that back into the grid. And so those are the concepts to help allow for these uses, but also to protect the public interest in Jackson County if these uses decided to make Jackson County their home. So when we require that they produce renewable energy, that also led us down to, well, we don't have any standards about renewable energy and how that gets located in Jackson County. And as everyone on the board knows, our topography is very different than a lot of areas, and so it's a little bit more challenging. And when you think about large solar farms or wind units or some of those types of technologies, how do we allow those in a way that would make sense for Jackson County? So we created some standards for renewable energy, not just in relationship to cryptocurrency, but also just in general, because we don't have any standards today. So if somebody came in and wanted to put a 20-acre solar facility in here, we don't really have any standards that would apply to it. So they could pretty much just develop those. So what we have is that, first of all, we talk about the fact that roof-mounted and or single-site renewable energy, solar panels and things of that nature for single-family residential or single commercial uses will not be impacted by this ordinance. So this is really just talking about facilities that are designed to produce energy on the scale. Yes, sir.
What about a windmill?
Windmills are included. So we have standards.
Single family.
Yes, correct. That would still be allowed. That's also in here. So if we're talking about renewable energy that is for single family or single user, we don't have as many standards talking about that.
It doesn't fall under this regulation.
Would not fall under this regulation, right? So we talk about and then with the wind energy though, we cap it at 40 feet right now. So not to put some standards on height for these facilities. So that'd be the only thing. We're not going to allow for. So what the regulations do here is we have. More specifically for wind, you have setbacks that are equal to the size of the turbine and the facility. But we also don't allow for renewable energies to be on protected ridges. So anything that's identified in our county as a protected ridge, either through the state's protected ridge ordinance that we adopted in 1983, or the county's mountain and hillside development ordinance, which we adopted in 2007, we would not allow on those protected ridges, because typically those are our more prominent ridges. We also would not allow for renewable energy on properties that have average slopes of 35% or higher, because if you think about solar panel facilities, you're going to have to kind of clear cut or cut out vegetation. And of course, a lot of our ordinances on steeper slopes are designed not to do that or to limit that. So those are some of the things that we have on here. I also talk about setbacks from property lines, setbacks from creeks and lakes and things of that nature, property buffers, requiring utility lines in and around it to be underground, and then just a warning sign and fencing that allow that. We also define all these, so we have some amendments to Article 11, which is our definition sections that define small animal processing facilities, renewable energy facilities, and cryptocurrency mining facilities. And the last update is from the 441 Planning Council. They've received a request to allow for microbreweries and breweries to be allowed in the Gateway District, which is their commercial district, which currently aren't allowed. So the recommendations coming out of the 441 Planning Council and the Planning Board is for the board to consider allowing that type of activity in the commercial Gateway District and also their industrial district. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments on just the work that the Planning Board's been doing over the last several months. And happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions concerning these recommended changes?
I've got a couple.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
6 foot vegetative buffer that goes around. I think that's been like a standard 6 foot at most of these and changes. Does that start at 6 feet, required the minimum and can grow on up to a natural to whatever foot that particular species grows to?
Yeah, and typically we don't normally when talk about buffering requirements. We just talk about the maximum, the height it has to achieve. We don't usually start off at a minimum. A lot of folks will do a little bit smaller. If you've got faster growing vegetation, and most people will do like a Leland cypress or something of that nature to help.
Be more affordable, 2 feet.
Absolutely, and which is consistent with how our other buffering regulations work across the county.
I understand that. And
Yep.
also did the Cashers Planning Council in Cullowhee contribute? I hear 441 must have been involved with this process.
They were only involved with the table of use change. So I said I'm going to bring all of those together instead of having 2 public hearings. We'll just be able to have one. But the planning councils, a lot of this will happen outside of the planning jurisdictions, because the planning jurisdictions typically have some tighter regulations on industrial uses. But the more stringent requirement would always apply within the ordinance. So if these standards tended to be more stringent or more restrictive than the ones in Cullowhee or 441, we would apply these to make sure that the communities are being protected.
And the last, is the planning board vote unanimous on these changes?
They will.
Oh, nice. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
So, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Adams?
I do want to mention that, so what will be requested at a future board meeting is to hold a public hearing. If you can go over, just go ahead and give them a heads up on that.
Yeah, so tonight we just wanted to bring this to the board's attention like we normally do at the work session. I would like to come back at the meeting on the 20th with a request to have a public hearing for October the 4th. We usually do our public hearings for land use in the evening, so folks who would like to participate can. But that would be the request. But tonight, I just wanted to present to the board and give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have.
Okay. Other questions? I know Commissioner Dietz, seems to me I remember there was a program that dealt with utilizing pasture land that had been used by cattle for solar farms. There was a program that worked with farmers to trade off and put solar panels in. And I know I was in Buncombe County recently, and over at Biltmore they have that large solar, and that's where they used to have cattle. And then down this weekend I was down at Hayesville. There's that large, several down there, and they're on pasture land. So do you recall anything about that, or?
No, I do not.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Post?
I don't. I know that a lot of pasture land does turn in, and especially in the Piedmont and further east you go. I think that it's possible in Jackson County. I think that there's fewer and fewer opportunities given the topography, and then of course the mountains. I mean, when they look at this, they're looking at 365 days of solar production, and finding an area that would give enough exposure for those uses probably more challenging here. Probably why we haven't seen many requests to date, but certainly when we thought about asking folks that were looking at this one specific use to say we'd like you to provide renewable resources back in, renewable energy back in, we also believe that we should probably show them how we would like them to accomplish that task.
Commissioner Woody, did you have a comment?
Well, just in light of what you had said, Chairman Matt Mahan, Bill and I had driven over to Bethel, and I was so surprised this area that had just used to be pasture was now a solar farm. Right there in Crusoe, Bethel area.
Yeah, I remember hearing a presentation at one time. I don't remember where it was at, but there was a state program that they were advocating on farmers who maybe were not utilizing pasture land anymore. Somehow there was a program to allow them to put in these solar panels. So similar to what I guess we were talking about, processing facilities.
Right.
programs that are in the state that advocate or allow things to be easier. And when those things do happen, it's good to be ahead of the game.
Right. And I think with the renewables, I think if you're talking about pasture lands, I don't know that would be there'd be anything in these set of standards that would deter that from occurring. Most pasture lands are not on 35% slopes. There's some, but or on ridge tops. So I think that would still comport.
There's some pretty steep pasture land in Jackson.
There is.
A lot of cows with short legs on one side.
That's right.
Now, this brick toll problem,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm about that's coming above creek.
No, we've not had any requests. This is more proactive. This is us coming in and saying we understand we have counties and jurisdictions in our region that either have had one or two of these or have been asked about them. So much so that they are looking at how they're addressing it. I think we just wanted to be ahead of the curve and say, let's talk about this before it comes to our doorstep. So,
very good. Any other questions from the board members? All right. Hearing none then. Thank you, Mr. President. Next is item 4, the Center for Domestic Peace. This will be a lease. We'll recognize our county attorney. The award-winning county attorney.
All right, so this is the lease for the Ridgeway property, the Ridgeway Street property for Center for Domestic Peace that you saw previously, I believe, at a work session. And then you went ahead and called for the 30-day notice, which was published in the paper. And more than 30 days has passed, and I don't believe we received any comments at that time. So it's now before you to approve. I do want to mention one thing. On behalf of Center for Domestic Peace, they want you to know that they're very happy to have this lease and they're very appreciative of it. However, they wanted me to pass along to you as well that they are now 8 at 8. They have one of their employees is full-time, so 7 full-time, 1 part-time employee, and they've budgeted, the budget this year includes 2 more employees. They're going to be up to 10 employees as they've taken on human trafficking, sexual assault services beginning July 1st. They've really grown. Really tripled the space, tripled their employees in the last couple of years. They're in the schools doing preventive and all the other services that we used to have years ago. So it's nice to see that come back. So they are also, you will probably see something about them soon entering into a lease with Mountain Projects to share space at what was our temporary health department. And so they're going to be utilizing that space as well. This space they will primarily be using for their groups, support groups, and for their counseling services. So for direct services here, because they'll have the privacy and be able to do that they won't be able to do there. So I just wanted to mention that to you as well. But this lease is on today for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board concerning the approval of this lease?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second? All right, we got a second. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. Commissioner Woody, did you have a comment? I see you unmuted.
No.
Okay. All right, hearing none then, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Stribling,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Commissioner Deeds, Chairman McMahon.
Yes, motion carries.
$10 a year is a good deal. $10 a year is a good deal.
Yeah.
It is a good deal.
Okay, next is item 5, report to the citizens. I'll recognize our administrative assistant, Ms. Carrie Tucker.
So just if I could jump in here, so this year I was unable to acquire an intern to help with this process. So I'd asked Ms. Tucker to take the lead on this, and I'd like to commend her with her work and commend her with her work with the departments to go through and actually produce this document she's about to discuss with the board.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chairman. So, first of all, I'd like to thank all of the department heads who gave all the information and helped me gather everything for this report. I could not do this or show it to you without their help. So, and I just want to give you some information on basically how to read the report and find the information for yourselves. So when you start off, you're going to see the updated goals for each department, and then you're going to move on to a summary of that department, and the last couple of pages on each department are what they offer for the citizens of Jackson County, what services they offer. And so I'm just going to highlight a few, 3 that I've picked out here instead of going through the whole report for you. So the first one's going to be the Economic and Physical Development Department. You can see here where I've updated all of the 22-23 goals for this upcoming year. And then just some photos. The second is just what the Economic Development's focus is, our partnerships within the community, just a little information on how to explore Jackson County and what Jackson County offers our citizens. The last page is our Buy Local campaign, Spend Local in Jackson County, and all of the contact information for our Economic Development Director and how you contact the department. Moving on, we've got our Department of Aging. So you can see updated goals for 22-23. Just a picture of the elders walk and just the senior citizens and what that center offers our citizens. And it goes on to talk about Meals on Wheels and Project Care and Project Fire. And then what our adult daycare program offers. And then, of course, all our contact information for the Department on Aging. And the last one I wanted to focus on was the Sheriff's Office. So it gives you kind of the Sheriff's Office mission and the department goals for 22-23. Photo of our sheriff. And just all the departments within the Sheriff's Office: administration, patrol, detention, investigations, civil processes. Just some information there on how detention works, and our security system, our school resource officers, and our Shop with the Cop program. And then last but not least, it gives you the contact information for the Sheriff's Department. And that is everything. And you've each got a copy. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
You do all this?
Mm-hmm.
She did good, didn't she?
You did a great job.
Wonderful.
Gary, when will this be online?
Tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah, and I have in times past shared the link, the digital link with folks. It's a great resource. Anybody has questions about Jackson County government and the kind of services that we provide, it is an awesome way to showcase all the great work that our folks do. And thank you for what you're doing here.
Yes. And I really enjoyed putting it together. I learned a lot from departments that I didn't even know.
And while you're at the podium, can you want to speak a little bit about Citizens Academy?
Yes, so our first Citizens Academy is Thursday, September the 8th, this Thursday. We're going to have Haywood Smokehouse cater, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, so a reminder to the commissioners, if you can attend Thursday evening,
Yes.
5 p.m. is the meal.
Yes, and then 5:30 you'll start the
5:30
presentation.
start migrating into the boardroom here for the presentation, and where if you can be here, we'll have an opportunity to say a few words on behalf of our roles as elected leaders and share a little bit about government.
Actually, I'll be in Asheville, but will the Citizens Academy have access to this, either whether it's a hard
yes.
copy or just
Mhm.
online?
Yes, they'll have a hard copy or it'll be online. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is old business, item 6, the final offer. This is on lot 45, Bear Pen, and lot 5, Norton Ridge. And recognize Ms. Baker again.
Yes, so we've had some active upset bid periods. Did you do that? It's up there. That surprised me. So this is the first one was lot 45 Bearpin. The original offer was 4,500 that you approved and went to upset bid process, and the current or the final bid was 10,000, so more than double. So that was a good one, and it's here today for final approval if you decide to do that. And then the other one was a lot 5 Norton Ridge. Commissioner Jones, you may remember this was a little, it was a little house at some point, but it was falling apart, and you knew the name for it. I can't remember what that was, but that's this one here on Norton Ridge. And the original offer was 7,600 on this one, with the final offer being 13,000.
If I'm not mistaken, it was called Pink Cloud Cottages.
I think that's what you said. There was something pink in there. Yeah. So these two are here for you if you choose to approve to these final offers, and we'll move forward to closing on these.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay. Do we have a motion then to accept these final offers?
Can we do that together, both of them?
I think we
Yeah,
can.
you can do these.
Yes, I have that motion.
All right, we have a motion then by Commissioner Dietz to approve these final offers for these lots, these 2 lots as indicated. Is there a second?
Second.
We've got a second by Commissioner Striblin. Any questions or discussion? All right, if not, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Deeds?
Yes.
Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes, let's keep this on tax roll.
Commissioner Stribling?
Yes.
Yes.
Chairman McMahon?
Yes, motion carries. Now we're down to our final 2 items on the agenda tonight. The Cashier's Planning Council under the appointment section, item 7. We do have a vacancy. This would be to fill the unexpired term of Michael Cox.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for us to appoint Judy Zachary of the form of the cashier of the pharmacy Zachary's. Her husband's Mark, but Judy carries phenomenal multi-generational history and can offer some great local insights, which I think is what we need in locally with certain values, and values do differ from neighborhood to neighborhood, and she will bring a lot to the Cashier's Planning Council.
Has she started the paperwork process?
And she's
Okay.
been approved.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. The name again is Judy Zachary, who's been nominated by Commissioner Jones. Is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, we have a second by Commissioner Woody. Any discussion, questions about this appointment? All right, hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll, please.
Commissioner Stribling?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Deeds?
Yes.
Chairman McMahon?
Yes, motion carries. And then item 8 is the Historic Preservation Commission. We have, get turned over here. Beth James was the appointee. Town of Dillsboro at-large appointment. And the Town of Dillsboro has unanimously voted to appoint Beth Paris James to this Historic Commission via reappointment. So this is coming to us from the Town of Dillsboro, from their town clerk, Debbie Coffey. So what's the pleasure of the board in reappointment of Beth James?
I move that we accept this reappointment of Beth Paris James? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Yes.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none then, Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll, please.
Commissioner Stribling?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Deeds?
Yes.
Chairman McMahon?
Yes, motion carries. That brings us down to the end of our regular business session this evening. I don't see any members of the press corps here tonight. I don't think there's anyone online, so we won't have any press conference. Is there any need for closed sessions?
No, sir.
Okay. With that being said, I wish everyone a happy evening. And Gail, I wish you the best.
Well, thank you.
Don't let
I'll
those,
do my best for Jackson
don't
County.
let those centurions outrun you.
Oh, dear.
Mr. Strickland, hope you get to feeling better.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
so I got a comment about Miss Woody. Miss Woody, I've noticed some odd colored lights in the background of yours. Are you by chance at one of the Raleigh nightclubs?
No, this is all the Comfort Inn. Is that right? Comfort Inn in Clayton, which is right outside Cary.
Okay, I saw you drinking water. That's okay.
It's a hotel room.
Okay, at this time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.